We will have our Pledge of Allegiance. It will be led by Abigail Maya Silva of Ethel I. Baker Elementary School.
I pledge of allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Abigail Maya Silva is a young individual who expresses the importance of perseverance and faith. Despite the fact that she had to overcome a serious obstacle in her life with a medical condition, she maintains a positive outlook. Abigail is thoughtful and conscientious in all that she does. She is loved both by staff members and fellow students for her kind and caring disposition. She always enters the classroom smiling, and throughout the day she seeks opportunities to help and brighten their day. Abigail is in the 6th grade at Ethel Baker Elementary, who is family-oriented. She is also family-oriented and lives with her mom, Rocio?
Yes.
Rocio, who is from, Acambaro, Mexico. She speaks Spanish fluently and interprets for her mom as well as her other family members. While at home, Abigail likes to keep busy by helping her mom with cooking and cleaning. Abigail has an older sister who attends Stanford University, and she would also like to attend Stanford as well. She would like to study medicine and eventually become a pediatric surgeon, where she can help others who also battle with serious medical conditions. Abigail dreams of being able to travel around the world someday, helping children who are in need. Furthermore, she excels academically and consistently scores at the proficient or advanced levels in all subjects. It is obvious that she takes learning seriously and works very hard. She is an excellent role model for others, demonstrating what it means to be a passionate, kind-hearted, and hard-working student. And so we are proud to recognize Abigail Maya Silva as the Sacramento City Unified School District Stellar Student.
Thank you, and I would also like to thank my teachers and also Mr. Overdahl for being here, and especially my mom and sister who had helped me a lot in this year. Thank you.
Thank you, Abigail. This meeting of the Sacramento City School Board is being videotaped in its entirety and will be cablecast without interruption on Metro Cable 14, the Government Affairs channel, on the Comcast and SureWest cable systems. Today's meeting will be replayed Sunday, March 24th at 9 a.m. and Monday, March 25th at noon on Channel 14 and will be webcast at www.sacmetrocable.tv. Video copy is also available for checkout from any library branch. Members of the audience wishing to address the board should fill out a speaker identification form located in the back of the community room and give it to the Chief Communications Officer, Mr. Gabe Ross, here on my right, prior to the conclusion of the item's presentation. Please speak into the microphone when addressing the board and state your name for the record. Please limit comments during public comment to items not listed on the agenda. If you are found to be commenting on an item that is on the agenda, you'll be asked to defer until your item comes up on the agenda. Please turn off all cell phones or place them on silent or vibrate. 5.0, announcement of action taken in closed session. Superintendent.
Thank you, President Cuneo. It's my pleasure this evening to introduce to our SCUSD community 2 new appointments. First, for our Capital Asset Management Services, it's a pleasure for me to introduce Kathy Allen and welcome Kathy. And when I asked Kathy what she would like me to say, she's just said simply, over 20 plus years of experience in the construction and capital asset work and business, and she's excited to be coming here to Sacramento. So we welcome you and want to give you a hearty, warm welcome to Sacramento. Thank you. It's also my pleasure to introduce Mr. Ken Forrest. Ken, again, comes to us and joins the team to be our new Chief Business Officer. And again, when I asked Ken, he just said, just tell him I'm here, I'm honored to be here, and I'm ready to get to work. So welcome, Ken, and we're really glad both you and Kathy are here. Welcome to the family.
We have public comment.
We do have a public comment on 5.0 from Leo Bennett Cochon.
Sorry. There, Thank you for handing out the audits. I'm hoping our new financial officer is able to take a look at the audits and address a concern that I've been bringing up for several years, which is the variance, the difference between how we end up final and our actuals. And especially, I think it's important to look at books and supplies, where you can see the pattern that in the final budget, it sits at $37 million, $29 million, $22 million. It's projected to be $21 million. And then if you go over in the actuals, you see that our books and supplies always drop. The reason is always given, that's restricted. And forever since 2006, and FCMAC was here, it said spend restricted first. And also, it doesn't make sense to me that if this isn't spent, why is it sitting in an expenditure column affecting our final balance? I'm aware of some of the software glitches and the roll-up procedures, but I don't think our board can safely balance with these levels of variances. Thank you.
Thank you. Item 6.0, agenda adoption. Do we have a second? We have a motion by Vice President Wu to adopt the agenda, second by Member Hanson. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? We have an agenda. Item 7.0, public comment.
We have 4 comments on 7.0, 5 comments from 7.0 from Cindy Salazar, Maria Rodriguez, Tong Tao, Lisa Romero, and Leo Bennett Cochon.
Good evening, Cindy Salazar. I'm here to renew my objection to closing all of these schools in favor of taking another look at this and coming up with something else. This plowing down and plowing through these communities is the exact opposite of an appropriate response. You know, these are communities that are already struggling, and taking away their schools that provide support, security, and stability in those communities is the exact opposite of appropriate, especially in these times. They've already been so deeply impacted in this economic downturn, and for the SCUSD machine to come in here and just plow right over them is just wrong on every level and for every single reason that's human. And this is just an inhumane act. So I would ask you to review, reconsider, and reprioritize our students over measly budget savings. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Salazar.
Good evening, board members. I'm very thankful and very blessed to have the opportunity to be here and to be addressing you all. My name is Tong. I am an organizer with HIP, and I want to begin by saying that HIP and the Putting Students First Coalition continues to oppose the school closures and we urge the board to rescind its plan to close the schools. The district's right-sizing plan was painted as a doomsday scenario in which school closures were necessary to prevent a state takeover. New reports are showing that the district is able to meet its financial obligations without having to close schools, which is an argument that parents, advocates, and communities have been pleading the district to pay attention to. Secondly, there's a few questions that we wanted to address to the board. We're still not sure what the district's overall timeline for the transition is. Will transportation be provided for displaced students to the receiving schools? Also not sure if parents who have limited English-speaking skills have access to transition information. What about staff and teachers? How will they be transitioned, and what is the timeline for that? We urge the district to keep track of these displaced students and just to see where these students end up at. Do we actually lose students, or do we have them go to different schools? It's important that we keep track of where they end up at. And lastly, just want to urge the board to rescind its school closure plans. Thank you.
Good evening, President Cuneo, Superintendent Raymond, and members of the school board. My name is Maria Rodriguez, and like the people who spoke before me, I would like you to ask you to reconsider the closure of the 7 schools. With a savings of $156,000 a year per school, I don't see this cut making an impact to our structural deficit problem. In fact, I would like to ask you to consider to look at the other side of the equation, the revenue side, and focus on increasing our enrollment. Public schools today exist in a very competitive market, yet we're forced to operate in a government model. As far as I'm concerned, that's a model for extinction. And I think there are people in this community and in our country who would like to see public schools extinct. I, on the other hand, think it's an injustice for any kid to not have access to their neighborhood school easily. And so I will continue to speak on this. I recently heard an economist and author, Richard Wolff, say, no corporate executive takes the market as given. Superintendent Raymond, I would like to encourage you to act as an executive, corporate executive in the best sense of the word. Don't take the market as given. I recently asked what the reasons were for the decline in enrollment, and you gave me a list of 8 answers, but all of those answers are beyond our control, things like the economy and birth rate. I would say that there are things that are within our control to increase enrollment. Personally, I can give you many stories of people that I know who have left the school district, public schools, or just their neighborhood schools, and I could give you those stories. One example I have is a woman that I met whose daughter would be starting Carolyn Wenzel, and she said she wanted her daughter to go to Alice Burney, and I asked why, and I was really surprised to hear her answer, because Carolyn Wenzel doesn't have a fence around it. Kids can wander off, people can wander on. That seems like it's an easily remedied thing. But anecdotal stories, I don't think, are going to have a lasting impact on you. So I've decided to take a market study of my own, and I've created a survey, and I'm going to go to every household in the Carolyn Wenzel area. And Mr. Wu, if you would like to join me, my contact information is here. And I'm going to ask, how many students do we have in this area, and what are the reasons for not going to it? Because I think in order to address this, we need to really understand the reasons why people aren't going to our schools. And closing schools is only going to hurt that problem more. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Good evening, board members, Mr. Jonathan Raymond, Superintendent. My name is Lisa Romero. I'm the Vice President of Joseph Bonheim. I came here once again tonight as a parent, as a representative of the parents that cannot be here tonight. I'd like to invite the board to go back and look back on your chart of the percentage of the socially economical disadvantage, and take a look at the list of the schools on there. You will find that some schools like William Land, Theodore Judah, the percentage rate is very low. For example, Joseph Bonheim's at about 80%, yet they were on the closing list. So that's just an example to show that a lot of the schools weren't really thoroughly looked through on these plans. And we are just kind of hitting a certain neighborhood with the schools that were picked. Couple of things. I like the idea of the 5-year plan. It's better than 2 days to tell us our school's going to close. I'd like to reinvite that for you to discuss that among the board members. I want you to think about the mental and emotional support, the counseling for the kids. It's a big change for them to go to another school. Some of you have went to 4 or 5 schools during your lifetime, maybe 6 or 7 if you're in the military. Would ask about the enrollment. We're still having trouble with parents trying to get into the other schools and getting their kids enrolled and knowing where they're going. After school programs, transportation, these are some of the things still coming up. They're being told that they're not going to be bused to certain places for certain reasons. Like I said before, we should look at all the schools in the whole community like I presented last time, and I know Ms. Rodriguez had asked for some of the enrollment and budget of the other schools to see where they stand, the small high schools, junior highs, for example. If you would please look into that more. And we don't want to forget about our bilinguals and our security, the things we brought up before. So I invite the board. The money is there. It's just a matter, if you close them down, it's just a quick plan. It's not going to work. It's going to be a domino effect because these kids got to go on to high school and colleges. And what's going to happen if they have no schools? There's going to be nothing left. So we've really got to think about the plan. So thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, Superintendent Raymond, board members. Glad the quorum's still here. It's very difficult when you've made a very high-stakes decision to stay open to revising it. Most of us, when we make high-stakes decisions, just want to move on. I'm urging you to show the students of this district critical thinking skills. Take a look at the data. Take a look at what people are telling you, what the PTA told you, that this is not a decision that they can support, doesn't have a focus on every student. To think to your hearts the words of our superintendent in 2010. He was talking about teachers at that point. Our most valuable assets are our children, and I think that we can do better by our children. The key, again, has been expressed by our superintendent. It's about relationships. As I said at the last meeting, to sit and observe a 4-3 board doing this incredibly difficult and important work is not how it should be done. I urge you to consider the gift of time. When people can't agree, one way that one tries to go win-win is to look for something else as a standard. And I'm urging you to consider the report, School Closure Guide, that's put out by the foundation that trained our superintendent. They urge boards to consider the gift of time. 12 to 18 months is considered the gift of time. And it's important that even if you do the minimal 12-month timeline, you have a greater risk of stakeholder dissatisfaction. Your former district has rescinded a closure vote. I think they are an example of using data and reconsidering when things are done. I urge you to take a look as a data point, even though I don't want any closed schools, at William Land, which you are keeping open as a receiving school. That's its footprint. And Washington, which you are closing. That's its footprint. These schools are essentially the same size, but Washington has a park for public space. It's also somewhat larger in square footage. It also has more classrooms. If you were to close schools logically, Washington would be the receiving school. They're basically paired in your closing strategies, and I think it's an important data point to look at that you need to consider. I have not been able to find any cost-benefit analysis I thank the secretary for passing it out.
If we could wrap
I
up.
modeled this on what you did last year when the superintendent recommended not to close the school. And if you crunch the numbers, you're going to lose money in this closure. So I urge you to take a look at all the different information the community is bringing you and reconsider, rescind, and rethink. Thank you.
Thank you.
And our final comment on 7.0 is from Jessica Arriaga.
Good evening, board members. I wanted to first let you guys know, I'm sure you guys are getting bombarded with us, asking you and pleading with you to keep our schools open. I just want to convey to you, we feel like we were run over by a bulldozer, and you have to forgive us if we get up a little bit angry. And so I really want you guys to see, I want to know how much you've already spent with the school closures. I went to a transition meeting, and Earl Warren is my children's receiving schools. They expressed to me that they have 40 work orders that they submitted to get repairs, and all of a sudden they're popular. So I want to know how much money you're spending to make these schools up to par, and what additional monies you will be spending to make these schools adequate, and what is the true cost savings at the end of the day. Don't keep my school open because I say so. Keep it open because it doesn't make sense to close it and spend more money at the receiving school to accommodate my children. I don't think that makes any sense. And I will want to hold you accountable when the figures come out and say, oh, well, we didn't save that $1 million, and this is the excuses that I have. If you take the time to research what additional funding would be needed, you wouldn't have been put in that position. I also want to implore that when visiting that school, there isn't any main security, so safety for my children is a concern of mine. Any stranger can walk onto that school premises and nobody will know that they're there. I have an issue with that, so I hope that there are some plans to rectify that issue, and that's going to cost additional funding from the district. So please, I am just asking that you review the plan and do the figures with transportation, crossing guards, and upgrades. This may not save you anything at the end of the day. And if it does, that is great, but I want to see it. I want those answers. So I'm just asking that you do that. Thank you.
Thank you. Item 8.0, the consent agenda. I will move it. We have a second by Vice President Wu.
President Cuneo, excuse me. There are
Yes.
public comments.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, please.
We have comments on 8.1B, as in boy, F, and G. Leo Benecachon. Do you want to take all three at once, or do you want to?
I see. You want 6 minutes?
Hopefully I won't need that much, but that'd be nice. I'll pay back what I borrowed.
Yeah, so give him 6.
I would like to draw your attention to 8.1b, page 8. This again illustrates the point. If you go down to books and supplies, you will see that the budget has been revised up from your original budget of $11 million to $22 million. It's going down slightly. The actuals to date are only $3 million, and the encumbrances are similarly low at $3 million. So the balance that's operating is $14 million. Again, I point out to you, historically, you have never spent more than $11 million in books and supplies. I certainly hope you're not jumping to $21 million when you're cutting everything that we're talking about. But when you approve this, you are telling staff that they can spend up to that level, and I hope you ask some questions about that. Moving on to 81.1F. I know it's a difficult decision as the president, how to make selections, how to balance, and I hope that you're sharing with the public today how you chose Member Hanson for this important role in terms of balancing our team and presenting to the public a sense that you're carefully selecting your team so that everybody participates in an equal manner. Moving on to 8.1G, which are the minutes. I'd like to point out on page 5, roll call vote. It states unanimous vote, and then as 4-3 for yes. I've always felt that the student vote should be counted, and so perhaps it should say 4-4, but one didn't count. That would be accurate. And the unanimous vote, I would urge that somebody make a motion to strike. Hopefully you will listen to the public and achieve a unanimous vote, but closing 7 schools is certainly not unanimous. And then backing up quickly to page 4, it's difficult in minutes whether they should be narrative or bullet points, but when you go over and over again the same thing, that the public comments on behalf, you have a tape. I would urge that when you write minutes, people spend a lot of time coming here. You capture the essence of your comments in these notes. I think you need to capture the essence of the public. And on behalf, when it says on behalf of school closures, and I know when I listen to the tape that that person spoke vehemently opposed to school closures, I think you might want to change that language so that when people look down the future to see what your legacy is as a board, they understand what the public brought in front of you. Thank you.
Just to make sure that So I'd amend my motion to correspond with the public comment, striking the word unanimous from the final vote, and put in its stead final.
I make the motion to strike the word unanimous and replace it with the word final, in order to correct the minutes of February 21st of 2013.
Thank you. Okay, thank you. We have a second by Vice President Wu. All in favor of, I can speak briefly about the issue of Board Member Hanson. Board Member Rodriguez has served with distinction on CSBA for 2 years, was a vital member of that organization and that body. The term expired, I believe, at the end of March. I made the decision to appoint Member Hanson because of his number 1, interest, number 2, experience in leadership positions across many boards, both inside and outside the Capitol. I think he will bring a needed voice to that body. He will represent us well and represent our interests well, and he has an intimate knowledge of the state political system as well as all relevant players, which I think would bring to CSBA a perspective that has not been there prior. With that being said, the motion on the floor to approve with the amendments stated by Member Rodriguez. All in favor?
Excuse me. I'm sorry. I just noticed one of the...
Sure. Do you want to make another one?
On the meeting minutes, page 7, the future board meeting dates and locations are wrong. It was February 13th that the meeting took place, and the future board meeting dates are December 2012.
So it would be March 7th and March 21st.
Yeah, so if we can, I will amend my original motion to strike item 11.0 from the original minutes from that as well.
Okay, so we have, do we have a second from Vice President Wu? Okay, we have a second. So we have, in essence, adopting the consent agenda with the 2 specific amendments to the minutes that were just enunciated by Board Member Rodriguez. All in favor? Opposed? Abstentions? The consent agenda is passed. 9.0, Board Workshop, Strategic Plan and Other Initiatives. Item 9.1, Second Interim Recommended Budget Reductions for 2013-2014. It is a conference to action item. Presentation by Richard Odegaard.
Good evening, President Cuneo, members of the board, and Mr. Raymond. Tonight, we're coming to you to ask for approval on the second interim recommended budget reductions for fiscal year 2013-14. We provided the briefing for the logic and the justification for the budget reductions, the need for the budget reductions at the March 7th board meeting. I would be open to answering any questions that you may have concerning the budget reductions, and I would ask for your approval. Before I do that, I would like to give you just a little bit of good news that we have got. And that is that at the March 7th meeting, the board authorized the sale of $60 million in trans. They were sold this morning. So the district now has $60 million of cash to meet our end of the year requirements. There were 8 bidders. It was a competitive bid sale. We had 8 bidders. Wells Fargo provided the low bid at a interest rate of 0.25%, 0.25%. And what that means to us, once you have taken into effect that of the bond premium, that we have a net interest cost for that loan of $60 million of only $70,000. So I think it was a very successful sale. The county did approve our sale of the bonds, predicated on our providing a balanced budget with the second interim report. And in the second interim, we have included budget reductions for the 13-14 year of $5.5 million. I would ask for affirmative action on the request to do $5.5 million in budget reductions for 13-14.
Thank you. Do we have public comment?
We have 2 comments on 9.1 from Leo Bennett-Cochon and Maria Rodriguez.
Yeah, right. That's what I was just going to say.
I'm just pointing out to the board that you do have a budget development calendar. As near as I can tell, it's once again been taken over by all the churn we're going through in terms of closing schools. And so please correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't believe we've heard from the community in terms of the public workshops, budget workshops that were originally proposed in February, 3 budget information workshops. We continue to budget by what I call PowerPoints, and I urge you to ask your staff to connect a PowerPoint to the actual documents being submitted to the state of California. It's very difficult. You don't even have it in your board packet. The office was nice enough to provide me the PowerPoint because they were gone when I came to the last meeting. But it's like, what do these numbers mean? Can you actually tie it to your interim report? When I tie it to the interim report, I don't see these kinds of income increases. I don't see the offsets. So it's all not clear and transparent as your policies call for it to the public. As has been pointed out, there has been some good news, and you only have to reduce this by $5.5 million. As far as I can tell, the proposal before you is putting the grant coordinator back in, which is about $130 million. So to me, you still have $70 million. And I urge you to think about what else to take out of these reductions. You've got an early K coordinator, an ADPE coordinator. You have a trades position. please show us the board actually doing a public policy process, quizzing your staff, getting additional information and data in a transparent manner, and maybe giving us something back for a change. Thank you.
Good evening again, Board. I'd like to introduce myself again as Maria Rodriguez, and to state that both my husband and I got our education through the public school systems. We were both the first in our families to go to college. My most recent graduation was from UC Davis, where I had a Master's of Business Administration with a focus on finance and accounting. And I love numbers, and I really hate to see numbers that are used weird ways. So I'm just putting who I am in perspective, and I appreciate the access to the numbers. The thing that I'm speaking about right now is that I have been coming to these budget meetings for the last 3 or 4 years, spurred on by potential cuts to music and sports and things like that. And I was always inspired by the adult ed people that spoke before this board. And I think many of you on the board were inspired by the adult ed people who spoke to the board. And year after year, one of their schools was cut. The next year they came back and said, we let you take our school last year. Now another one's being cut. I don't understand how $841,000 can be swept from adult ed restricted fund to balance the general fund. And I'm sure there's things I don't understand, and I like to learn. And I'm actually getting some help to learn more about all of this. But it just doesn't seem fair that year after year adult ed suffered when they had funds available to them. And it makes me wonder if there's other funds or other parts of our school district that are suffering unnecessarily with funds sitting there designated to serve them. And if there's a way that I can understand how it's appropriate for those funds to be redirected, I would really like to know how I could understand that. And I would probably like an answer to that. So.
Thank you. Do we have anyone who wishes to speak?
That I would ask if the board has any questions concerning the budget reductions, that I would be happy to answer them.
We have Board Member Rodriguez.
Yeah, I'll do it. I will officially ask you to, if you can, answer the question posed by the public commenter, Maria Rodriguez, about adult ed funding.
If you could restate your question.
Sure. We had a member of the public that just came forward and asked for an explanation of adult ed and the funding mechanism for adult ed and the rationale of why year after year we were, as a board, making decisions to move the money from adult ed to balance our budget.
I think I can actually answer that, have a little more history than you.
Thank you.
Mr. Odegaard, and but I think the second part of the question was also around the any other reserve funds, which again we provided. That was asked last time by you, Member Rodriguez, and we provided that information out. And I'll ask Mr. Odegaard to comment on that, and I'm sure he's anxious to comment upon the library, the books account. So we'd ask you to clarify that one too. But I think again this has been historically. In this district, as the district's been faced with significant astronomical budget cuts, $150 million in the last 4+ years, that adult education, I think, in an effort to again continue to consolidate and to keep the majority of the resources from impacting our K-12 classrooms or our pre-K-12 classrooms. Not to say that we don't value adult education here, but it's been about how do we continue to, I think, preserve what is the what I would say would be the larger mission of the school district. Not the whole mission, which is pre-K-12 education. So over the years, as the state made Tier 3 funding, which is the funding mechanism for adult education in the state, although the governor is challenging that this year, he's actually proposed to eliminate adult education and have that program go to the community colleges. We have over the years been I think forced to make some very difficult choices, and part of that has been to consolidate our adult education programs. They're now consolidated at Charles Jones Skill Center, whereas many school districts, in fact the vast majority in California, have eliminated their adult ed programs. They've swept all that money. So we've been able to, I think, keep an adult education presence, without having to eliminate it. And I actually think the program at Charles Jones now is in a way providing a lot of alignment with our programs. We have adult basic education, we have GED, we have ESL programs and classes together aligned with our technical classes. That isn't to say that there isn't more demand. We know there is, but again, because of the budget situation, we've been I think put into that situation of having to make some really difficult choices. I learned a different word for it today, but I keep forgetting it. It's the rock and the hard place. Back to Mr. Odegaard to talk a little bit about the other funding or other reserves that we had provided in answer to the board. Perhaps you can provide that to the public and then address the other issue around libraries and materials and supplies and books.
Yes, I'd be happy to. Just as in addition to the superintendent's comments, adult education has been listed as a Tier 3 program, which you have observed over the last 2 or 3 years that the state has taken many previously restricted accounts, made them into Tier 3 programs, which frees up the money to be used as however you want. I would say that the federal government has not done that, and the money we get from the federal government is still very restricted, and so we can't use that like we do state funds that have been listed as Tier 3 programs.
Can I just, I want you to explain Tier 3 because perhaps we have some people that are listening. We have people here, but and I'm not sure, maybe superintendent or maybe a member of Royal, since he works at the legislature as well, can explain what Tier 1, Tier 2, and Tier 3, what that did, and then when it took place, what year it took place, and then how that has either helped or not helped the district. So somebody could explain that before you could move further.
That basically, the state gives us money in 2 ways. They give us unrestricted dollars based on the revenue limit, and they give us restricted dollars in programs that they have specifically set up over the years and allocated funding to. The restricted dollars come with a set of rules that we have to live by as to how we spend that money. As the economy tanked in 2009, the state realized that restricting funds coming to the districts was really tying the hands of the local school boards, and they put these programs into what they referred to as Tier 3 programs that took the restrictions off the funding associated with those programs. What I guess what I would do in regards to some of the other comments is that I think it would be very helpful if people that want to learn more about school funding were to come to us and ask. We would be happy to share information with them. It would hopefully prevent misinformation from becoming out in the public, and that leads to confusion. We would be happy to go through questions and respond to their questions, and show them where the numbers come from and why they are what they are. I would have to probably do some research on the supplies and accounts. It's typically in the 4,000 accounts. We get a lot of our restricted dollars not at the beginning of the year when the budget is developed. The money comes to us oftentimes as late as November, December, January timeframe. And then we don't budget those funds until we get them. And that is why you see a large difference between the original budget and the first and second interim. That is when the accounts are built, the expenditure plans are built, but we have to put the money into the accounts, and we put it into the 4,000 accounts, and that is the practice of every district I have been in, and there are 5 of those, and that is exactly how it's accounted for. So it's not that it's something that has not been foreseen. It's just the way school funds are distributed to us, and the timing of when they're distributed to us, and the fact that we can't in June say we're going to get $20 million in Title I funds from the federal government, because they don't tell us that until their fiscal year starts in October, and we oftentimes do not get those funds until half the year is done. So hopefully that might clarify some of the issues.
Kind of stuck on something you said about the books and supplies. In December, we had our first interim here, you as our interim CBO. And I did bring up and I kind of gave you an explanation as to why I was bringing it up. It's something that I've been bringing up since 2008 when I first got onto this board, sworn in, about 4390 account, which lies in that 4,300 books and supplies line. And you had told me that you would do some research about that, go back and talk to Ms. Hagemeyer, that she had told you that would be one of the questions that I would be bringing up. So now I hear you saying that you're going to need to do research again. So have you not done it yet? Or?
But I thought I had responded to that question when it was originally asked. Was there more information you were looking for?
Well, it's just that you're saying now that because of the books and supplies line, which is the 4,300 line, that you just said it, that you were going to need to do some more research on that.
Only from the perspective that I don't have the data in front of me. When we briefed the first interim, we were prepared for that specific question. I did not expect to be talking to the first interim tonight, but rather the second. And so I just don't have the data with me. I will be happy to provide it as soon as tomorrow.
I'm just curious, do you have the number, do you have any information about this interim budget's 4,300 account on hand right now, or it's not with you?
It's in the interim report.
You don't have the specific detail about that?
I don't have it open to that page, no.
All right, thank you. Just want to be clear. So I guess for our new guy, that is my issue that I talk about. So you might want to take the time to talk to Mr. Odegaard and perhaps Ms. Hagemeyer if she's still available. But and obviously now the community is looking at it. What I'm specifically looking for, and perhaps like you said tomorrow you could provide it to me, is an accounting of what exactly is in that account, the 4,300 line or the books and supply line. Because what I've found out in the past of what types of funds are there, they are restricted funds, and they are funds that go to school sites. And so I'd like to have an accounting of that. I think the board should have an accounting of what lays in there because it is very deceiving when you see it on these interim reports. It's a high number. The actuals come in at a very low number. It presents like an anomaly in the budget. And it just doesn't make sense. When the community is looking at it, I'm looking at it, other board members are looking at it, it just doesn't make sense. We need a good explanation. We have 2 new board members up here. We need an explanation as to why this is occurring in that particular line.
Okay. We'll take care of that.
Yeah. At the same time, I'd like to tell our executive committee that's here tonight, perhaps we can put a budget workshop on the agenda, maybe a special meeting for those members of the community that want to have more information about the budget so that they can come and ask those questions, have district staff available to answer questions so that we have transparency in our numbers. Start building trust in our community. I'd like to thank you. Now to get on with my own questions. I'd like to thank you for providing us with the ending fund balances. Actually, it was at a request of Board Member Pritchett, and I did piggyback onto her request and ask for the specific types of funding that were laying in these accounts. So I see here you have general fund, but it doesn't give the balance of, it gives you a balance, but it doesn't give you the breakdown of what makes up that balance. And that's kind of what I was hoping for. Do you think you can provide that detail to us next week, this week?
I have a slide in the next presentation that will talk directly to that, yes.
Drill into it. Thank you. Great. That's that question. About adult ed funding, I happen to be listening in on a budget education committee at the legislature, and found it to be very alarming that our adult ed is at risk of losing its funding. I think it's very important for our district, and it helps our students. I agree with the superintendent. We need to focus on what the larger scale is of our mission, of our purpose, is to educate children. But we're also educating the family. And there are studies that show that when parents go to adult ed, that their children increase in their academic performance. So in this committee in particular about adult ed, we heard various stories of how our own high school students take advantage of our own adult ed programs. So as a result of that, the committee decided to reject the proposal for eliminating adult ed funding without prejudice. And so just kind of on a think forward basis, do we have anything that we're thinking about doing, whether we're going to use some of the LCFF money to continue our adult ed, or whether we're just going to eliminate it altogether if we don't get those fundings? Like, what are the conversations that us board members should be prepared to engage in, and the thought process of where we're going? And maybe superintendent could answer that.
Right. I think you're accurate that one of the committees did soundly reject the governor's proposal, and I actually think it will be, resoundingly rejected all around. And I don't think it will become law, and that adult education will continue to be part of both the state and the federal budget. We are potentially, I think, looking at providing a resolution. Some other school boards have. I've asked council to draft a resolution, and we'll be as a board looking at taking that forward and expressing our continued support for adult education to be in the state budget, to be enabling school districts who I think are uniquely positioned. Not that our partners at the community college level don't, but I think in this community we're uniquely positioned and have a strong history of providing services to our adults. So, we have every intention of continuing. We didn't propose any further reductions to the core part of the program. The program now is really about, in addition to the federal funds it generates, and it's self-sustaining. And we'd like to be able to continue to find ways to perhaps expand those in efforts that have been successful, such as some of our site-based ESL and ABE and GED and citizenship classes. That is something we're looking at, and depending upon what happens with the revenue, it is something that, as we're developing our budget priorities, we are taking a look at. One area that doesn't get, bless you, that does not get enough focus is our parent participation preschool programs, which I think are really a win-win. They help our parents become better supports for their children. It's a very solid preschool education program, and it engages our parents at a very early age. So we're looking at potentially ways we can expand that program as well. So there's a lot of attention and focus on continuing and trying to expand back our adult education programs as the budget is being developed from a priority standpoint.
Mm-hmm. I do, and you weren't here, Mr. Odegaard, so this might not be fair question to ask you, but maybe Superintendent, if I can jog your memory, I remember that when we were initially taking away from the adult ed program, there was a comment by one of the staff members that said it was really difficult to then gain ground again to go forward with an expansion. That if we take it away today, that it would take about 3 years for the funds to catch up in order for us to expand the program. I know this is kind of really bad because we're talking in what ifs now because of the governor's proposal. But do we have kind of like a plan to expand adult ed, or can we do like a plan A and a plan B? Like, we don't have a governor's money. This is what our plan would do, and we have governor's money, and here's how we want to expand.
So to the first comment, I think if you eliminate a program completely, that individual's comments, would have more validity in terms of, you eliminate the infrastructure and the staff that's available to teach those programs. But we haven't done that. We've certainly cut back, but we have not eliminated. And I think at this point our contingency is that should the resources expand, we'll be in a place to look at expansion plans, which would be more site-based or adding some additional classes at Charles Jones Skill Center. The state funding that is going, the program is self-sustaining right now in terms of the state resources. That we're not putting additional state resources into those programs right now. So the federal resources, again, as Mr. Odegaard said, have not been reduced and have not been necessarily forecasted to be reduced as they were on the state level. And if the state should increase its supports, or we're in a position where we've, I think, taken care of what I think are additional priorities, such as we've got custodians that we have to return. We have counselors that we need to fill out. We have class sizes that are at their max, again, in our pre-K through high school programs. So there's a litany of priorities that would need to be addressed if and when the resources return.
And just one last comment on the adult ed piece is that if we go site-based, I'd like to see some early surveys come out to our individual school sites to ask parents what their needs are, so that way we can prioritize which sites that we then need to expand out on our adult ed programs.
Happy to do that.
I guess I wait your presentation, the next one over, to see the drill down on those specific accounts. And I thank you very much for providing some of the information that I asked for from the last meeting.
Thank you.
Member Arroyo.
Thank you, President Cuneo. And I know that we are still reeling from the impacts of the cuts that we've had to make to the district, and we're not quite done, right? And we're already talking about how we may recover from those kind of devastating cuts. And so regarding adult ed, and obviously I don't know if there's already, like Board Member Rodriguez mentioned, a plan as to how, if the house burnt to the ground or pretty much close to it, how we're going to rebuild, right? How many rooms, how big the kitchen, so on and so forth, right? The details of what our adult ed program will look like in the district. And so it would be really good to have a prelim, at least, of what it would look like as we rebuild the plan, right? It would be great to assess the needs of the district when it comes to adult ed, given the fact that so many of the districts surrounding the district eliminated those programs. Sac City became that much more important to providing those services. And so considering all those factors, it would be great to go into a plan, and then so that when the money's returned, we have an ability to then have an established plan to implement, rather than just kind of go along as we see fit on the moment. Which then leads me to the next recommendation, because I really don't know if this is literally on the table yet, is as the superintendent mentioned, there's a litany of items that are due to be restored when we get more money, right? Hopefully, home to school transportation would be one of those, as custodians and some other services that are of critical importance to the district and to the students. And I don't know if this is the pleasure of the board, or if it's the superintendent that comes with a arranged list of priorities of how we will be restoring those services as they come online, rather than just kind of getting the presentation before the board meeting and say, this is our plan for right now, and then kind of build around the house little by little. I would rather have a pre-thought plan of, and this might require the discussion of fellow board members to then prioritize as monies become available. What do we, as representatives for the community and being their voice, feel that it's most important for it to come online? And then give direction to the superintendent in the district to move in that direction, rather than just kind of getting recommendations provided to us on a meeting by meeting basis. And obviously, when the superintendent brings a recommendation to either reinstate a certain type of employee, either teachers or classified employees, or whoever that may be, that it's bringing a value to the district, it's difficult to say, no, we don't want them, right? I mean, how not to say that we don't want librarians, or we don't want custodians, or we don't want bus drivers. What I would rather see is a list of what is even more imperative, right? And so I think it would be more valuable not only to the discussion of the board, but to the community, to have a bigger discussion as to how we will recuperate from the last 4, 5, 6 years of devastating cuts to the district. So it's a comment that I pose not only to the community, but I also pose to my fellow board members, and maybe do a workshop, maybe bring it to the next month's agenda, where it's not the first or the second meeting of the month, right, where we discuss initiatives, and just have a full-fledged discussion as to how we prioritize as the monies become more available.
I can respond briefly. As I said last meeting, in regard to the budget reductions that are before us, I see them as limited in the sense that what we're doing is we're telling SCOE if we can't do anything else, we will make these types of reductions so that our district will maintain at least a qualified outlook, and hopefully someday a positive financial outlook. I do, and as I said last time, and what I've been advocating for since I was elected is a more robust discussion around budgetary priorities, in line with what Member Arroyo said, with maybe a little bit of variance in the sense that I want to talk about budget priorities in the sense of student outcomes. So how do, and this will dovetail into Dr. Roberts' discussion, where are our monies assisting kids the most? And that could be arranged in a priority way. That could be arranged in a number of different ways. But I think we're there, and I can say that I am very hopeful and working diligently to present to the board for our May and June discussions a kind of conceptual outline that would be in line with the kinds of discussions that you want to have. So, and I'd be happy to have more discussions offline about your ideas and how those can be brought forward. But I am in agreement that we need to start tying budget decisions to student outcomes, and we've neglected to do that for the last 2 years, in my opinion, and that a more robust discussion about priorities and how the money we're spending directly affects the results that we're getting in the classroom is one that I am all in favor of, and I will hopefully begin to bring to the board. Member.
And then I have another comment, and this comes out of the tug of war, I guess, that could be described as when reports are read by members of the public, and then we hear their perspective or their views of as far as what they see, right? And so, independent of how we view the reports, right, if the public agrees with how the district analyzes the money and reports them, the reality is that there's a disconnect of how the district views the budget and what the public sees, right? And so the question is, what do we do about it? And I think that this is a decision that the entire board needs to engage in, to decide how do we engage with members of the public, right? Is it, I know some members had access to reports and they generated reports, and there's a flow of information and sometimes there's none. And so I think that this board, by policy, needs to come to grips and be very clear as to how we need to provide information to the public in a more transparent, clearer way, regardless of interpretations. The information needs to be clear, and otherwise we will continue to have two-way conversation. I mean, that it's not necessarily meaning in the same plane. We're not talking about the same thing. So the public has a right to know. They have a right to understand how the budget is put together, what it really means, and if, as you assert, there's misinformation or misinterpretation of the report or the numbers, then how do we solve it? How do we take care of it? Just maybe it's obvious that the reports that get presented during board meetings are not sufficient to inform the entire public, right, as to what we are dealing with, or the numbers as you see them, or the budget that we're dealing with. So I don't have necessarily an answer as much as I'm identifying a problem that there's a disconnect in communication as to what the district has on its hands and what the public sees or understands. And, do we have budget meetings? Do we prepare ourselves with a budget or an agenda item with all the reports on the table and questions come up and then we just dig through them? I mean, I don't know. The bottom line is that I think that the members of the community have a right. In the end, this is their district. This is their money. The taxpayers pay for it, right? If we act like this is our district or this is our money, I don't necessarily agree with that perspective. And so if they have questions, if things are not clear, it's incumbent upon us to really then go the extra step to make sure that there's clarity or that their questions are being answered. If there are discrepancies on how we should spend that money, I think that's an entire different discussion, right? And that's up for the board to discuss and to decide. Yet, I'm not sure that we have all partners necessarily with the same level of understanding on what these budget numbers are. So workshops, new processes, new policies, I would love the board to discuss on that in order to have that dialogue with the public in a clearer way.
Thank you, Board Member Roy. Board Member Rodriguez.
Yeah, thank you. It just is something that President Cunha, something that Member Arroyo just said about how do we get to a point where everyone is talking about the budget in a non-threatening manner, in a transparent manner, and in a way where we're being progressive. And I had asked some time ago for a committee to be established, a budget committee. Before you arrived, President Cunha, and upon just my and Member Arroyo and Member Kennedy's arrival to the school board, we did have a budget committee, and I sat on the budget committee. I was asked twice to chair that committee, but in my humble opinion, being a person with a degree in business administration and finance and having the accounting classes along with that, I humbly said I was not able to look at a school district budget. I just quite simply didn't know enough about a school district budget. I think with 5 years under my belt, looking at this budget, understanding that it is very complex. Obviously, I do my homework because I'm probably the only one to ask questions when it comes up to the budget. I, again, am going to ask you to establish that committee. I would love to serve on that committee and in a leadership capacity so that I can help these budget conversations come about and that we can help the community who is inquiring, who's using the means that they have available to them, to understand the complexity and understand that you may see something, but there's a story behind every number that you see. And so to do a little bit more research and tying different pieces of these reports together to make a better outcome so that we can work together as a community. Because going along with what Member Arroyo said, it's not our money, it's the community's money. They pay their tax dollars, and they should have every right to know what we're doing with it. So, long way to say, I urge you again, and I encourage you to establish that committee, and please consider me to be on that. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Both Member Rodriguez and Member Arroyo, I will give due consideration to them. I do agree with the transparency piece. I will say that the state of California does us no favors with the way they finance public education. But that being said, I do believe it's a two-way conversation. I also believe that it's incumbent upon the board to set the priorities for the school district and the superintendent and his staff to execute those priorities. And I'm looking forward to a robust discussion coming up when we discuss things in more detail in May and June. Vice President Wu.
And move conference to action.
Do I have a second? Okay, we have a motion to move the item 9.1 from conference to action with a second from Board Member Pritchett. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? We are now in action. I can move it.
Move the action. Move the item, I mean.
To approve?
Yes.
Okay, I can second that. Do we have any board discussion anymore? Seeing none. There is a motion by Vice President Wu with a second by myself to approve the second interim recommended budget reductions for 2013-2014. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
1 no. Member Rodriguez. Abstentions? The item passes. Thank you. Item 9.2, 2012 to 2013, second interim financial report. It is a conference and action item. Mr. Odegaard.
Thank you very much for your vote on the budget reductions. I will say that we have miles to go before the end of the fiscal year. We look forward with anticipation to the May revise. We have, after the March 7th meeting, gotten a favorable quote from our health providers that will provide some reduction to the cuts that are going to have to be made. That'll be brought back to you at third interim and also in the budget development. So we absolutely needed to make the cuts tonight to support the sale of the trans. But I think that there will be an opportunity to have fewer cuts when the budget is actually prepared in June. On the second interim financial report, I would just remind the board that this report is a result of financial operations from July through the end of January. Tonight we will do a summary of the second interim. We will talk to fund balances. We are still looking at deficit spending. We will talk briefly about cash flow, look at the multi-year projections and how they're developed. We will look at the working budget to date. Just a very short discussion on the economy and the effects that may have on the budget development, what our timeline is, and then our next steps. This slide will show you that this is a combination of our unrestricted and restricted budgets, a comparison of side-by-side comparison of 2011-12 and 12-13. As you can see, in the current year, we are operating with about $5 million less in revenue. Our expenditures, thanks to the, I'm not sure that thanks to is the right term, but the budget cuts that were so difficult to make last year, that our projected total expenditures are now about $393 million rather than the $418 million that was in the year before. And then we show what the ending fund balance is projected to be. Last year, the ending fund balance was projected at $10.5 million. It actually, when the actuals came in the September timeframe, that we had an ending balance of $21 million that was carried over to the 12-13 year. And this year, we are projecting to have a ending fund balance of about $15.1 billion. The ending fund balance is broken down. GASB, the Government Accounting Standard Board, dictates how this should be laid out. And we carry in our ending balance about $500,000 for revolving cash and stores. We have a required state mandated 2% reserve. If LEA is over $100 million, you're required to have a 2% reserve. For those districts that are under $100 million, they're required to carry a 3% reserve. We are looking at restricted carryover of about $2 million for next year, and this is primarily in Title I, Title III, and EIA. The other assignments used to be reported as unrestricted dollars. It is still unrestricted dollars. It's just new terminology that GASB has dictated to us. So that is how the $15.1 million that we're projecting is broken up. And is that the slide that you were referring to, Member Rodriguez, the breakout of the fund balance?
No, actually.
Okay, perhaps we could talk offline and find out exactly what it is that you're looking for.
Thank you for asking, though.
That fund balance, we did a historical look at it. The blue is unrestricted dollars, the red is restricted dollars, and the green line is a combination. It's the total ending fund balance. What I would ask you to look at is the is the total reserve, and you'll see over the past 5 reports that we have a steadily declining total reserve. That there has been some discussion about spending down the restricted dollars. You will note in the blue lines that our restricted carryovers are projected, have been coming down and are projected to continue to come down. What is of concern on this slide is the red bars, which is the unrestricted dollars, or the blue line, I beg your pardon, are the restricted dollars, very close to the 2% reserve, and one that we need to be concerned about. We do have a history of deficit spending, as you can see. The blue line reflects revenues. The red line reflects expenditures. That in only 1 year did we have excess revenues over expenditures. And when expenditures exceed revenues, we're deficit spending. Looking at the cash balance continues to be a problem for school districts throughout the state, and that's primarily due to the fact that a significant amount of our cash has been deferred into the following fiscal year. I do believe that the governor and the legislature are trying to rectify that, but what this has effectively done is transfer the expensive borrowing money from the state to the school districts. As you can see, in October of 2012, we paid off the $75 million TRAN that was issued last year. We just borrowed $60 million to get us through the end of this fiscal year. And that $60 million TRAN will be paid off by the end of September. On the multi-year budget, this is a slide that I've used for some years that shows in a very general sense how we are looking at the budget in the current year, how we are projecting it for the next 2 years. We are looking at ending the year with about $3.5 million in an unrestricted ending balance. That $3.5 million will carry over into 13-14 and help us in balancing the budget for next year. The $5.5 million in budget cuts that you just approved has been built into the 13-14 year. Had we not approved that $5.5 million in budget cuts, we would not have made our 2% designated reserve. We would have had only about $2.3 or $4 million to end the year. And were that the case, the County Office of Education would not have approved the sale of TRANs. Given the timing of it, I think we're very close in how we sold the TRANs and made the budget cuts, but I do believe that the indications were there that it was going to be successfully done. As you can see in 14-15, that right now we're projecting a negative $14 million for an undesignated ending balance. So there is still work to be done that hopefully we will get additional revenues as the years go by. I would point out that historically the last significant recession was in the early 90s prior to this. And the state started the process of deficiting the revenue limit, and that recession was not as deep as the current one, and it took 10 years to recover from that. So it's not going to happen quickly, but I think that we are headed in the right direction. This is the working budget that we have. This will show you a history that from the adopted budget through the 45-day revise. On this slide, I would like to point out beginning fund balance, which is the fourth row up from the bottom. Beginning fund balance at the 45-day revise was reflected at $10,500,000, and then it jumps to $12,577,000 at first interim. The reason for that is that at the adopted budget, the district is projecting forward as to what all of the revenues, all of the expenditures will be, and they come up with a projected ending fund balance. What happens between 45-day revise and first interim is the completion of the unaudited actuals, and that is the first time that we actually know what revenues we got in the prior year, what all of the expenditures were, and that results in the change in the beginning fund balance. At this point in time, we projected an ending undesignated balance of $3.5 million at first interim. We are projecting that is still a solid number, and that is a number where we will end up the year. The economy, we just recently got a report from the UCLA forecasters, and they are predicting a strengthening economy. We'd point out, or they point out, that this is the slowest recovery since World War II. They're anticipating GDP to grow only at 2% in the current year, and then the immediate out years, a growth of about 3%. Prior recoveries from recessions have typically grown at 4 to 6%. Our recovery now is primarily due to recoveries in the housing market and in auto sales. There are some headwinds that we can anticipate, primarily the effects of the sequestration, that we know that we are going to get about $2.6 million less in federal aid next year than we did this year, based on the 5.9% reduction that was mandated as part of the sequestration. There is a long-term imbalance in the federal budget that has to be dealt with. There's going to be an increase in payroll tax. There is an increase in payroll tax and high earners tax, and the effect that has on the economy has yet to be seen. Plus, we are still looking at what the implications are of the Affordable Care Act and how that is going to affect the economy. I'm missing a slide. Possible tailwinds. I thought I had one more slide in here. But possible tailwinds that might help us is if there is positive movement on the local control funding formula, and if the economy continues an increase in sales taxes and manufacturing that is over and above what has been projected. What we're looking for on the timeline tonight, March 21st, we're bringing you the second interim financial report. During April, we are going to continue to review the state budget updates as they become, as action is taken in the legislature. We will provide the board with updates as we get the information. In May, the governor comes out with his May revised to his initial January budget, and I am hoping that that will be good news. We will have better information as we move through April. On the 16th, you will get a staff analysis of the governor's May revise. In June, third interim financial report, result of operations through the end of April. You will also have a budget presentation conference where we talk about just exactly those items that the board expressed interest in tonight, as to how the money that we put back into the budget should best be utilized and how it correlates to student achievement. And then finally, on the 20th of June, you will get the official 2013-14 budget. We'll have a public hearing and then adopt the 13-14 budget. So our next steps, we will continue to closely monitor the cash situation. With the $60 million loan, we anticipate finishing the year with somewhere around $9 million of cash available to us. It provides, I think, a cushion that should take care of worst-case scenario. We will continue to monitor for state budget updates. We are going to review budget priorities and how it relates to student achievement. That's a real goal. And we will develop budget recommendations in support of that academic achievement, and we will continue to provide information to the board and all stakeholders. I think that we are all advocates of transparency when it comes to the budget. We will do what is necessary to make school finance as transparent as we possibly can. What we need to acknowledge is that there's a significant difference between commercial accounting and fund accounting, like we do in schools, and it's a difficult thing to understand. But we certainly are willing to work with people to help them understand that. So that is where we stand as of the second interim. This is brought to you for information this evening. And action to accept the second interim.
Thank you. We have public comment.
We have, excuse me. We have 3 public comments on 9.2 from Leo Bennett Cochon, Karen Sweat, and Grace Trujillo.
Good evening again. I'm very disappointed in you students. You need to ask tougher questions to show that you're listening to the learning. Your own operational expectancies require actual numbers. If you don't have actual numbers, you're going to fall into the traps that are set by you. Diane talks about how she has a BA. I have an honorary certificate for being an ace negotiator, hiding money from everybody. I'm a labor person, but in my class, I got picked for management because they knew that I'd hate it, but I'd do a great job. So that's what's going on here, okay? So let's just see if we can enlighten you. If we could stop. Thank you. Is that there? No. Okay, so you were given the slide. By the way, it's nice if it would be in your board packets instead of analyzing it the day that we're here. And if you'll look at it, once again, you're projecting $25 million under books and supplies. That affects your bottom line. You never spend it. I'll tell you a little bit later. I'll give you the bonus on why 4390, 4000 matters. Okay, just a little tiny lesson. Here you're separating out restricted and unrestricted. Here you're mingling it. This sequester, 4.9%, that's special ed money. You know, if you want to mix them, mix them. If you want to separate them, but you need to be consistent as you go through all this stuff. As a negotiator, I would always be concerned if there's a line in here that tells me specific ADA numbers, and then next year you don't have the ADA numbers. I'm going to very quickly go through the budget report if you bear with me. If you'll just go to page 39 in it, you will see you have a balanced budget. If you look down, other adjustments, you just did 5.5. It still claims 5.7, so you still have a little extra in there. And next time around for 14-15, in here, there's your 14 million reductions. It's not a deficit. It's assuming, just like today, you will find places to cut that you don't need to. If you look back up to revenues, you will see that you're contributing $42 million each year from unrestricted to restricted. If you change to page 1 under restricted, you will find that same number as contributions. So if you figure out how to spend your restricted money, like FICMAC said, you will have less contributions going out of unrestricted, and you'll be able to balance this budget instead of every year having your auditor do it for you. Since I'm out of time, I just want to very quickly show you an exemplar. Here's San Juan. That's a true decreasing income and expenditures. This is us, okay? We're not going like they are. We're managing to stay just above. This is our income line. And then we dip one time into our reserves. We were
Could we
above
finish
it.
up, please?
And then last slide, this is the real world from San Juan, following your operational expenditures, audited actuals over and over again. So the board can ground its discussion in real numbers, not hypotheticals, and San Juan is nice enough so the public can understand to footnote and footnote. So we have all the information we need. Please change your practices. Thank you. Oh, bonus. I phoned the California Department of Ed. Money, it's arcane like Jeff said.
You can make
It's
this
not
comment at a later
counted
time.
until it's spent from certain restricted funds. So you establish a reserve in your expenditure account. But if you don't clear that reserve out, it creates a false reading. It's a software fix. Hasn't come around yet. The auditor fixes it for you each year.
Thank you.
There's your 4390s. Well, those are your 4310s and your 4320s. I just happen to have an expenditure report for each of the...
Ms. Sweat, your name for the record, please.
My name is Karen Sweat. Good evening, Board and Superintendent Raymond. 2 hard acts to follow. So you're getting another little spreadsheet, very tiny. I don't think I'm going to walk you through it. You've been walked through enough spreadsheets tonight. This is very shortened. I really just wanted to address one statement made on page 2 of the agenda packet for 9.2. It says, a major initiative, use the second interim financial report information to help guide budget development for 2013-14 and 14-15. I would like to caution against that because of the spiking that does take place at the second interim. And I'm going to shift a minute here. A really funny thing happened as a result of the school closure issue. People all over the district, parents and community members, were just coming out of the woodworks, and I was getting millions and millions of calls because, as a matter of fact, I do know how to not only read the budget reports, not as well as the past 2 who just spoke, and I also know how to read extensive expenditure reports. I can tell you all about 4390 from a month ago. We have formed your Budget Watch Committee. We have been doing this. We looked at about 60 different accounts. We've created spreadsheets. I have in my living room right now a budget document library back to 0506 with the 5 major budget documents. And in some cases, we have the audit at the end because it's also an important document. We're looking at the trends for unaudited actuals, but we made our spreadsheets to include the first, second, third interim, the adopted first, second, third interim, and the estimated actuals. And what we found, you can take a look at on the papers I gave you.
You want a moment?
Unless you have questions.
Go ahead and have a moment. Did you want to finish your thought?
No.
Okay.
You can go ahead and just read. I did ask for a report to be posted on the district website and gave you a little brief timeline of how long it'll take to pull.
Thank you.
Good evening, members of the board and Jonathan Raymond. As you know, I've always been concerned about the budget and I've never taken the time to actually look into it.
Your name
until
for the record,
now.
please.
My name is Grace Trujillo. I'm sorry. It's a very complex, very detailed, and there's so much to learn. I want to take the opportunity that I'm going to take you up on your offer. I think we need to work together. I got that information from Karen. She's very knowledgeable. And at the same time, she was saying I know there's accounting of commercial and also funding, but you know what? It's the same accounting. And I think it's the same principles. You just have to work at the different details. I think that's the key thing, just like taxation. I think there's one thing that I noticed. There's management interest, parents' interest, and teachers' interest. We need to put it together. I think in the budget, we need to do Plan A, Plan B, Plan C, and give it an opportunity for community members to take a look into it versus projections and actuals. Also, we need to look more into the book supplies, materials, adult education, interest and bonds, and how it's going to be affected in the future. Yearly and also projections for the 5-10 years. 5-10 years, we need to look into the bonds and the balloon payments and the fixed payments and how it has an impact on the whole school. Also the benefits. Because people need to see the long-term impact all this is having, not the short-term. Also, we need to give recommendations more for the classroom settings. We need footnotes. We need expenditure reports. We need breakdowns. I think as a community, we need this information in order to make a good decision as a team. Because remember, it impacts all of us. Remember before I said, my child is not being impacted. It is. Because guess what? Right now, special needs children are not being bused. Therefore, they're going to their home school. Since they're going to their home school, in my particular classroom, there's kids that are nonverbal, verbal behavior problems. Guess what? What's happening to my child? My child is getting behavior problems as well, and it's not talking and doing non-communication. It's going to be an impact on all of us. Also, Theater Judith, I know that parents are outraged over that because it's being impacted in their school. It's just a matter of time. Let's work together. Remember, the money belongs to the parents and the community. Therefore, we should be working together as a team. And I appreciate if we all, like I said, now they're getting more and more people with accounting degrees, more people with interest in knowing the budget, because that's how it gets impacted and decisions are made, and figure out that each decision and the impact it has in the future and will have in the future. Because remember, our kids are our future, and without a good budget, a good foundation, there's not a future for them. Thank you.
Thank you, Grace. We have Board Member Hanson.
Certainly appreciate the opportunity to learn more about the budget. Obviously, as the newest member, it's a steep learning curve, and with a limited staff support, we do have to rely on the public to help us out with that and enable us to ask the right questions of staff and rely on the staff to help us ask the right questions. Looking at the fund balance sheet where it showed the smaller restricted accounts, I assume that that's a good thing, that we're spending more of our restricted dollars than we have in years past. So just noting that, I know that's something I've heard in the 5 board meetings that I've had thus far, that people have been observing that we have not spent our restricted funds. To me, this seems like the dollar amount's going down. I know I'm just looking at a graph, but
that's correct.
I assume that we're maximizing the use of our restricted funds, which obviously we want to continue doing. I do want to note for all of us, really the most critical thing that we're going to have to face with the budget is very clear. It's not, moving numbers around here and there. Yeah, it's complicated, and we all have to work together and figure this out. And unless we are working together, we're going to get crushed by healthcare costs. Are really, I think, what is something that we're all going to have to work together. If you look at the multi-year budget projection, salaries and benefits plus $10 million in 1 year, plus $12 million the year after that, that's plus $22 million in 2 years. We couldn't close enough schools to keep up with what we're looking at. And I know we're anticipating a 9% increase in healthcare costs just in 1 year. And I know that it's been going up between 5 and 10% every year in the last 5 to 10 years, just like it is for everyone in the audience, just like it is for everyone who's watching, just like it is for all of us that are sitting up at this dais. And that's what, the whole country is going to have to grapple with that. And we're going to have to do that because we can't manage that otherwise. It means us working on chronic conditions that our staff has. That means having a health and wellness policy for staff, and not just for our students. It means all of us working together in ways that we haven't even contemplated yet. So I hope we're really prepared for some really big tasks, because that's where the budget explosion is happening. It's not happening anyplace else. And lastly, we're very happy. Your service has been great to the district. Thank you very much for the time that you've been with us, and hopefully you'll spend as much time as you can helping train Mr. Foster, who's going to be joining us soon. And I think you've heard the challenge from the community that have testified here and from the board members who've talked so far, and I'll add my voice to theirs. It's critical that we have as transparent a policy as possible, that we try to make this as understandable as it can be for all of us, to have it on the website so people can take a look at it, to have budget meetings. I would very much appreciate having that myself so I can continue learning and being an effective member. So thanks for stepping forward and being willing to apply and take the job, and congratulations on the job. And I'm glad you're ready to get to work, because there's obviously a lot of work to do. And I hope that we'll be able to do public board meetings and have some good planning ahead of time so we can include the community. That's really critical to make sure everyone knows that we're working together on this. We're all doing it for one thing, and that's for the children that are there. So there's a lot of opportunities to do. I'm sorry, it's Mr. Forrest. So welcome, and I'm looking forward to that, and I hope. I'm glad to hear people making positive comments, because unless we're all working on it together, we're not going to solve anything. And we've certainly had a real tough time the last couple months. So, just those couple comments. Thank you.
Thank you, Board Member Hanson. Do we have any other board members who wish to comment or question? Seeing none. Up, Board Member Rodriguez.
So I just want to say a couple of things here on starting with the ending cash balance, that graph that you had on slide number 7. That's just cash balance, and then we talk about the infusion of the trans in between that line that you're. Yeah. Can we bring that slide up, please? Slide number 7 on Mr. Odegaard's presentation. So you're talking about our cash flow. Yes. On that. And then you point to areas where we've asked for trans, or actually we're looking at a tran paid and then a tran issued on this one. So when we paid the tran in October of 2012, we then dipped below the negative line. We stayed under the negative until we got our tax receipts, somewhere around January. Then we took a dip up, or we took an upturn temporarily. And then because of our operating costs, we took another nosedive, way down to like 40 million in the negative. And now we've been issued a trans successfully. So, what would make this slide a little bit more illustrative, like better for everyone to understand, is how does this correlate with our deferrals that we're getting from the state? I know we've had several deferrals because we don't want to ask for trans. We don't want to go out there to borrow. But we're forced to. It's like our backs are against the wall. And because of that, we have to go out to ask for money, and that money has to be paid back. And there's a cost to that borrowing. So, I'd like to have that slide come forward in your next presentation. because it would show, and maybe if we can just post it, because I know we had one before. I know Patty had it, but if we can update it and post it onto the website,
We can do that.
Thank you.
And that would be, I think, helpful in people understanding the timing of the cash as it comes throughout the year. That, of course, major cash comes in when property taxes are due, and then the deferrals create huge problems in maintaining a constant flow throughout the year.
Exactly. That's it. And on that slide, does it say how much of a deferral we get that the state is deferring us? Do you recall, Superintendent? I know it has the dates.
And it's very consistent with how much we're having to borrow. So, in many ways, this mirrors our cash deferrals, which is why we're forced to go out and borrow money. It's around $60 million is what we're currently owed by the state.
Cumulative. So if we can have the update of that slide with the dates of the deferrals, with the amount that we've been deferred, and then maybe a legend at the bottom of like how much we've been paid back from the state, how much the state owes us still, because I know they owe us.
We can do that.
Yes. And then on this multi-year budget, I'm with Mr. Calshone. When you were going through this, I'm a little confused here, because in one regard you're talking about unrestricted, and then you come in and you jump into restricted funds, and I think that we need to be talking about oranges to oranges and apples to apples. And when we're looking at this, I'm flipping through. I look at your slide, and then I'm flipping through the budget document here for the interim, and I'm having a hard time matching up some of these numbers into your interim. And it's not fair to us as board members to receive this and not receive this, so that I can do my own homework at home, and then it's not fair to you, because now I have to ask you questions on the spot because this information, I don't understand it up here. So on slide number 8, which is the next slide over, on your revenues, let's just take revenues for the 2012-13. Where did you get that 264? Is that added from a couple of different pages, or is that a specific page you can point to in our interim budget?
Standing here, no, I can't tell you to a specific page.
That's what I'm telling you. It's not fair to you either, right?
But if it might help alleviate some of the confusion, is that when we're looking at unrestricted budgets and budget cuts, that special education certainly plays a major role in that. And when we experience a cut, even though the special education, the ESEA money comes to us from the federal government as a restricted amount of money, the district subsidizes the special education to the tune of over $20 million unrestricted dollars. So it has a direct effect on our unrestricted funds. Additionally, Title II falls into that same category. It has a direct impact on the unrestricted general fund. So again, I would invite people, if they have questions, to come to us and understand why the numbers are what they are.
Looks like Mr. Castillo might have something.
Which is that?
Page 21.
Oh. Mr. Castillo has just pointed out, if you look at page 21, the 264,025,518 is reflected on the board-approved operating budget, column B, and row 5 under total revenues. Thank you.
if I were to follow this all the way down, then I'm seeing if I have revenues at 264, the total expenses I don't have. I'm going to have to look at doing some addition for salaries and benefits. That would include certificated and classified, and then employee benefits altogether.
Yes.
Those three?
That's correct.
Okay. Yeah, I think it's kind of difficult for us to, as board members, we're asked to approve this budget, yet there's no primer, there's no first reading of the interim. And then, you know what I'm saying? There's like, kind of like we almost have to have a first go around looking at this.
That some of that I think is an unfortunate timing problem of having the meetings on the first and third week. In that it's a timely process, a time-intensive process to take the data as of the end of the reporting period and then translate it into probably a 100-page report that we have to send to the state through the county. So ideally, it would be something we could talk about twice. Given the timing of the events, it becomes very problematic to do that. That we would invite the board as well as the public, if they have questions, to come to us, and we'll be very happy to have a free and open discussion on any questions that you might have about the budget.
I just want to caution you that when we say things like that, you kind of want to put a control on it as well. Have a certain time, date, place. We can have those conversations. The other thing is that a lot of us work, and so I'm a parent. I work. I'm also a board member. And when you get board packets as thick as this, it's difficult. To go through any of this, and then to receive information up at the dais even makes it more difficult. So, I think we had a lot of important information given to us. This report that was given to us board members has a request to pull a specific report. I would like to ask that this report be pulled and then placed onto the website. It's here in the back of this packet. I'm not sure if she left an extra copy for you, but perhaps I've seen this before, and maybe it should be kind of your standing modus operandum. Just post your reports to the district website under, where we have our budget stuff, and then invite this organization that has been developed to watch our budget to a one-on-one with you, talk about it so that they're understanding it. So don't wait for them to ask for a meeting with you. Perhaps you should ask to meet with them and then work out the differences. So again, I just want to point out that the 4,300 line is definitely exactly the way they're talking about it. It's anomaly, and it raises a red flag for me every single time when I see it. And, we shouldn't be budgeting that way. We should be diligently looking at ways we should be utilizing those funds, because in reality, those are the dollars that go to our children in the classrooms. And when we don't plan for those dollars to be spent, they're not going to get spent accordingly. And I know that there's a lag time from when the federal government or the state gives us those monies, but it doesn't prevent us from planning on how to spend that money. And it doesn't prevent us from going back and looking at a historical look at how much has been coming in and then making a plan accordingly. on a conservative side.
Thank you.
Board Member Pritchett.
Thank you, President Cuneo. I do not have a degree in accounting, and I'm learning as I go, but I did learn a great deal about our budgets from Karen Sweat prior to becoming a board member. So thank you, Karen. I think she left, but I can't stress enough how the transparency and consistency is so important in times right now. Well, I did have one request from the gentleman. Is it Mr. Chacon? He showed a slide in regards to the San Juan budget. I'd like to see about getting a copy of that for our records. Just thank you. And the other slides that you showed us as well that we didn't get copies of. I'd love to see that. Thank you.
Thank you, Board Member Pritchett. I will move the item from conference to action.
Second.
Second by Vice President Wu. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? We are now in action. Does any board member wish to comment or question? You would like to, Superintendent Raymond.
I would just like to make one comment to point out that our fiscal advisor, Mr. Demkevich, who has been with us for quite some time, was the CBO over in San Juan. He's been works with us very, very closely. Will continue to work and support us with Mr. Forrest. And I think one of the great strengths that Mr. Forrest brings is his ability to make budgets understandable to the public. And we've had some discussions about continuing ways to increase our transparency and knowledge to the community. So I just wanted to point that out, President Cuneo.
Thank you, Superintendent. Appreciate that. Vice President Wu.
Move the item. Move to approve the item.
Do I have a second? No? All right, I will second. We have Vice President Wu moving to approve the 2012-2013 second interim financial report. All those in favor? Aye.
No.
Wait. Opposed? Member Rodriguez, would you like to be opposed? Are you opposed?
I'm opposed, sorry.
So, opposed?
Sorry, yes, no.
We have Board Member Rodriguez opposed. Abstentions? The ayes have it. The second interim financial report is approved. Item 9.3, college career readiness. It is an information item.